Final slideshow. I'm going to try and pull all of this together for you. I'm You'll notice that I haven't gone explicitly through each of this week's readings. The way that I've been setting the course up, and hopefully you've kind of noticed the pattern, is that you will have the material to read on Monday. Blackboard discussions are up. You start reading through it, and with your classmates, coming to some conclusions about the readings. Tuesday, I put up the videos and lecture so that you can then go through and get the important points out of this week's lecture. Also on Tuesday, your quizzes are up and they're due by Sunday, so that gives you plenty of time to read through the material, work through the discussion board, come to some different conclusions on your own. And also, I don't insert my own voice into the discussions that much. The first week or so I did, to get everyone on the same page, simply because I know that the way I do discussion boards are a little bit different than a lot of the other professors. So now most people have gotten the hang of it, and so I just kind of monitor what you're doing, and if people get on the wrong track, I will step in and correct it, or ask some questions to go a little bit further. But overall, I've been doing very, very well with them. Very, very pleased, in all honesty, with the discussion boards. So, wrapping this up, sex and violence. We talked about some of the isms, sexism, racism, gay and lesbian issues. What about sex and violence? Because it's obvious that we're going to have to expand our idea of the Miller test. The Miller test, again, is still the legal test, but we're going to have to go a little bit beyond that for this class, because that no longer suffices just to say sexual issues, patently offensive, does it have redeeming value? Because we know that there could be songs and music about violence that truly are obscene. We know that there can be just language that is truly obscene and has nothing to do with the sexual act. So we're really going to have to expand it a little bit and go beyond prurient interest and look at some of the other issues that are there. Studies have shown that sex does indeed entice viewers. That if you have a regular, and they did this several times, and this is why they have pre-screening of films, and we'll talk about this when we do films, but if you do a film that turns out to be a PG film, and they have in some parts of the country released it, get some feedback, and then they find out, well, everybody thinks it's boring. They put in a couple of sex scenes, get an R rating, people see it. Pushing the boundaries, thinking about some of the most recent films that have come out, and I know we're in music this week, but just looking at films, that makes it a little bit easier for a moment. Magic Mike, about the male strippers, did a pretty good profit. Um, so films that do explicitly deal with sexuality tend to bring in audio listeners and viewers. Songs that deal with sexual issues typically bring in the listeners as well. Violence, on the other hand, does not normally lead to more sales. In and of itself, just a purely violent film, say like a Texas Chainsaw Massacre, if there's a good story surrounding it and the violence is there, it's okay. But if you take away the story, make a weaker story, and just make a very violent film, such as maybe the Saw films, you do not get the same kind of sales as you do with a story. So, compare a violent film like Texas Chainsaw Massacre or any of these others that, have done very well. The Saw series is a very successful series. But when you look at the money it makes compared to something like the new Batman or, the Mission Impossible 4, some of these films that are bringing in $500 million, they're just nowhere in the same league. So violence in and of itself does not increase sales in song, music, art, literature, etc. Sex does. They've also found that if you combine sex and violence, it does not attract. So, in other words, if you have a song that just about sex, for example, George Michael had a song, I Want Your Sex, just by the title, and it was attached to the Beverly Hills Cop movie, sold well. People loved it, even though it did raise a stink with the lyrics and the video. But it sold very well. Why? Because it was about sex. If you take a song that is just a violent song, such as Smack My Bitch Up, wasn't really a big performer out there because people really couldn't see the value in having this song and definitely would find it obscene to have it played on the radio. So, didn't make it. And then when you combine the two, if you talk about very violent sexual imagery, if you talk about, raping or, you know, horrific torture, etc., you've even lost more of your audience. So there's got to be a balance because we know that in the United States, sex is kind of on a knife's edge. We like it until we get to a certain point, and that certain point is always changing. Violence, no, typically is not going to be your moneymaker. And if you combine too much sex and too much violence, you're definitely not going to get a moneymaker. So you have to deal with those two issues because we have enough obscenity issues with sex, enough obscenity issues with violence, and when they come together, it just magnifies the obscenity issues. And so how are we going to decide at the end of the day if a song is obscene? And I say here first, Miller test, of course, exclamation point. That's where you're going to start. I've already sent out the songs to you. I want you to look at the lyrics of the song and pick the song of your choice. And I want you to do a couple of things, which I've already put into the email for you. But the first thing is you will decide, is the song obscene or not? And you will go through the Miller test. And you really should write it out as, if you're going to do, let's say, I'll just give you one I don't think I gave you, She Bop by Cyndi Lauper. Does the song appeal to Purient Interest? Does the song She Bop by Cyndi Lauper appeal to the Purient Interest? Yes, it does. It deals with masturbation, and that deals with sexual issues. Is it patently offensive? Yes or no? And then you would use specific examples. When she talks about masturbation, he bobs, she bobs, I bop, you bop, we bop, talking about everybody masturbates. Then she gets into the humorous aspect of it. People say, I'm going to go blind, etc. So she brings in all of these stereotypes. So is it patently offensive? No, it's parody, it's humor. Does it lack redeeming value? No. It's a song, and as such, it has artistic value. So that's the first side. You're going to go through that. But then I also want you to think about the other issues that are coming into play. For example, if a song you pick just happens to have violent issues, I also want you to look at the violent issues and provide a few examples on why the violent side of the song is obscene or not. Or if it deals with drug use, why is that obscene or not? Look at each individual thing and you will craft this into a well-written essay. Grammar is going to count, spelling, punctuation, so please make sure you do it in a Word or Word Perfect document. Grammar check it, spell check it, double check everything before you submit it. So, because I want you to do well on this. It is due a week from Friday, so you have 2 full weeks almost to complete this. There's also a sample critical analysis written in Blackboard under weekly materials. There's also the rubric. Once you've completed it, you will upload it to Blackboard under the Critical Analysis tab, under Critical Analysis 1. It will send it to me. It will give me a check to see if you have copied anyone else's work. It will also do a quick grammar scan for me, and then I will go through and grade it and give you comments back on that. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me. And I will be talking with each of you again next week for our next week's lesson.